This is the fourth formal commemoration of the Invincibles, and probably after many other informal, of the First World War and the Easter Rising, which essentially were the one conflict. Many thousands of people, both remembered, unremembered, celebrated and uncelebrated from that conflict, are buried in this cemetery, along with all of our own, I suppose, grannies and granddads and mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, great-grandchildren. We all remember them here at Glasnevin at this time of the year. I think in particular this year I would remember Sean Brophy. Sean was the inspiration and the driving force behind the Invincibles, and able to be picked up by Mick here behind me for this year.
Sergeant William Bailey was a man of high renown. Tooraloo-raloo-raloo-raloo. In search of gallant young recruits, he used to scour the town. Tooraloo-raloo-raloo-raloo. His face was full and swarty, of medals he had 40, and ribbons in his hat, red, white and blue. 'Twas he who looked a hero and made the people stare as he stood at Doyle's corner, Tooraloo. But alas for human greatness, every dog he has his day. Tooraloo-raloo-raloo-raloo. And Sergeant William Bailey, he's getting old and grey. Tooraloo-raloo-raloo-raloo. No longer youths are willing to take King George's shilling, and things for him are looking bright and blue. In spite of fife and drumming, no more recruits are coming for Sergeant William Bailey, Tooraloo.
Our opening song, Sergeant William Bailey, reflects the changing attitudes in Ireland in 1917 towards the recruitment into the British Army to serve in the Great War. About 40,000 Irish men had joined the new British armies in each of the years 1914 and 1915. That surge had reduced to about 12,000 for the year 1916 as the horror stories of combatants caused a shift in public sentiment towards the war in Ireland. By early 1917, military recruitment had virtually dried up in Ireland. Assaults on British soldiers, often as a result of casual altercations, became a common feature in Dublin. Another problem for the recruiting sergeant was the spread of consumption in the trenches. Dubliners were very familiar with the disease, with a death toll of 1,300 in 1917. The year 1917 was memorable for a number of iconic events here in Ireland and in the war in Europe, some of which shaped the future course of Irish history and which affect us up to this day. They include the Russian Revolution and abdication of the Tsar, the establishment of the House of Windsor, mutiny in the French army, the battles of Messines and Passchendaele, the deaths in the War of Francis Ledwidge, Willie Redmond and Father Willie Doyle, the curate of the trenches. The demise of the Irish Party as an electoral force. The Dublin Convention on Home Rule. The death on hunger strike of Thomas Ashe. In Russia, as in the West, there was a mixture of war weariness, shortages, industrial conflict, and military disorder. What made the Russian situation more problematic was the inflexibility of the political system to adjust to the material and political pressures of war of such a scale and duration. Part of the problem was the lottery of hereditary monarchy. The Tsar attempted to mobilize popular support by taking personal command of the army, but he had not the slightest competence in military matters. Mass protests over food shortages turned into revolution, and protesters were shot dead outside the Winter Palace in Petrograd.
While the Palace of Justice was burning, the Pavlovsky Regiment marched from its headquarters with its band playing. I watched these battalions pass by in close order, led by non-commissioned officers. Instinctively, I followed them. To my surprise, they marched towards the Winter Palace, went in, saluted by sentries, invaded and occupied it. I waited a few moments and saw the imperial flag come down, drawn slowly by invisible hands. Soon after, alone in the snow-clad square, my heart heavy, I saw a red flag floating over the palace.
The people's flag is deepest red, it shrouded oft our martyr dead, and there their limbs grew stiff and cold, their heart's blood dyed its every fold. Then raised the scarlet standard high, within its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. Look round, the Frenchman loves its blaze, the sturdy German chants its praise. In Moscow's vaults its hymns are sung, Chicago swells the surging throng. Then raise the scarlet standard high, within its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here.
In 1917, Lloyd George established an Irish convention as a last-ditch effort to find agreement for some form of Irish self-government on a 32-county basis. Sinn Féin boycotted the proceedings, while Northern Unionists did everything they could to sabotage the prospect of an all-encompassing agreement. In the event, the convention failed to progress matters in any shape or form.
Me carry across for Ireland north, the hour our trial draws near, and the pangs and the pains of the sacrifice may be borne by comrades dear. But the Lord take me from the offering throng, there are many far less prepared, though anxious and all as they are to die, that Ireland might be spared. So wrap the green flag round the boys to where our speed. We bear it noble and might to lead my winding street. In life I live to seek fame and follow the way. But now my eyes roll in my hand, must be there I'm dead.
The death of Thomas Ashe. The graves of Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa and Thomas Ashe lie back to back in the Republican plot here in Glasnevin. He had been on hunger strike with other Republican prisoners in Mountjoy jail. Ash died in the Mather Hospital on September the 25th, 1917, at the age of 32. In contrast to Pearse's famous speech at the grave of O'Donovan Rossa, Michael Collins' oration at Ash's graveside, following a firing of a volley by uniformed Irish volunteers, was pithy and pointed.
That volley which we have heard is the only speech which it is proper to make above the grave of a dead fiend.
Planning for an attack on Messines in Flanders was assigned to Lieutenant General Sir Herbert Plumer and his Second Army. General Plumer was often seen as a prototype of Colonel Blimp, but that was to do him a great disservice. Unlike other generals, he learned the lessons of the song. He planned in great detail so as to afford his men a much better chance of survival. He constructed a mock-up of the German defences, so that his soldiers would be familiar with the layout. He arranged for new roads to be built with one-way systems to facilitate the evacuation of the wounded. 2,200 guns were assembled with 144 tons of ammunition in 3.5 million shells. 0 hour was set for 3:10 a.m. on June the 7th. An almost full moon shone in a clear sky. As the first mine exploded, huge mounds of clay the size of farm carts were thrown into the air, forming craters 130 meters in diameter. The shockwaves resulting from the explosion led local people to believe they had experienced an earthquake. The worst effect of the explosions was the fumes, which caused many of the Irish troops to vomit. In the haze, units crossed each other, confused, high on adrenaline, blinded and choking with dust. They battled their way across no man's land under a creeping barrage to take their first objective. Shortly after 5:50 a.m., the second wave of Irish infantry took on the attack to their objectives. In their enthusiasm to get forward, one group of Munsters advanced beyond the line of their own creeping barrage and suffered heavy casualties as a result. Later in the evening, a similar tragedy hit the 16th Irish Division when it suffered self-inflicted carnage from their own artillery due to communication difficulties on the battlefield.
The church a heap of it. One looks and weeps for it. That's what they have made of it. Mud. Slimy and wet, churned and upset. Here bone that once mattered, with crosses lie scattered, broken and battered, covered in mud. Here where the church bell tolled, where our heroes fell in that mad start of hell, mud. That's all that's left of it, mud.
Messines was a rare military success, an advance at far more limited cost than later battles, and it acquired a special symbolic significance in the story of the engagement of Irish in the war. Here, famously, nationalist and unionist men of the 16th Irish and 36th Ulster Divisions fought and died side by side. Their sacrifice is honoured at the Irish Peace Park and Tower opened in Messines in 1997.
So, as we sit here this morning, near to Christmas Eve of 2017, in this village of presence, this silent field, this sacred space that is Glasnevin Cemetery, we are united in our memories and imbued by the spirit of Christmas, the feast of the Prince of Peace. Let us commemorate the souls of those who have died in all sides of the conflicts in that decade that was centred on the First World War.
We had a tenor voice so pure and true. The words were strange, every note we knew, and soaring over the living, dead and damned, that German sang of peace from no man's land.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alle
with photos, cigarettes and tots of wine. We built the soldiers' truce on the front line. Their singer was a lad of 21. We begged another song before the dawn, and sitting in the mud and blood and fear, he sang again the song I longed to hear.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alles schläft, einsam wacht, nur das traute heilige Paar. Holder Knabe mit lockigem Haar, schlaf in himmlischer Ruhe, schlaf in himmlischer Ruhe.
And in the morning the guns boomed out in the rain, and we killed them and they killed us again, with bayonet, bullet, bomb and gas and flame, and neither us or they are all to blame. There was heavy fighting right throughout the day. For one night's peace we bloodily did pay. At night they charged, we fought them hand to hand, and I killed a lad who sang No Man's Land. Oh, silent night, no cannons roar, a king of peace is born forevermore. All's calm, all's bright, all brothers hand in hand, and that young soldier sings, and the peace of Christ still rings, though the captains and the kings build no man's land, sleep in heavenly peace.
We also dwell in a special way among the Patriots, John Brooke, who died on St. Valentine's Day earlier this year. John was the driver of this event since its inception in 2013. This is our lament for him, adapted from the music of J. Ungar in its Ashcote Inferno. that decade that was centred on the First World War, with the compassionate response of generous hearts. Our wish is that the peace of Christmas may be with each of you all your days, and that you may flourish in all that you do, in all the areas of your lives. We conclude now with a musical reflection from the Invincibles that encompasses a lament for those who died in all wars, and the spirit of peace that is Christmas, the dream that was born in a herdsman's shed.
Sir Eileen, the Tibrith Arden, this fallen road gone low. Sir Eileen, the Tibrith Arden, more a sala Thomas Doe. Slán le Piccadilly, or slán yo Leicester Square. Is Sir Eileen the Tibrith Arden, or a Will McCreed yo? Estes ein langen Weg nach Tipperary, Estes ein langer Weg zu gehen. Estes ein langer Weg nach Tipperary, und das Mädchen, das ich kenn. Auf Wiedersehen, Piccadilly, auf Wiedersehen, Leicester Square. Es ist ein langer Weg nach Tipperary.